Welcome to today's lesson for Plant Tax. We are going to be talking about the poppy family, also known as Papaveraceae. So let's jump right into it. You know how I like to talk about family characteristics before we talk about the required, more specific genus characteristics. So let's do that. Right now, some features that will apply to all members of the family Papaveraceae include all of these features. So maybe you can kind of write these down, copy them along with me as we talk about them. First of all, the sepals. They're oftentimes deciduous, and there's 2 to 3 of them in the family. That's kind of the norm. The petals, there will generally be twice as many petals as there are sepals. So in other words, 4 to 6. The sepals are generally deciduous. The petals are often wrinkly. So in this picture, we can see those petals are very, very wrinkly. And the sepals, we actually can't really see them in this picture. And maybe that's because they already fell off because they're deciduous. The gynoecium, we don't have a bunch of generalizations, although they do have the kind of normal situation, which is a superior ovary and a syncarpous gynoecium of multiple fused carpels. Superior and syncarpous. Nothing too exciting there. We cannot generalize a number of fused carpels. The fruit type is they're always going to have a capsule. Nothing too exciting there either. That is pretty typical in the angiosperms. Now the habit of this family, we're going to have lots of herbaceous members of this family. There are a few, though, that are woody. So I'm going to say herbaceous to woody. So that arrow kind of includes everything in the middle. There's some annuals, there's some perennial herbs, and there are definitely some long-lived, kind of woody, shrubby members of this family as well. The leaves are generally kind of alternate. They can be more or less basal and colline. They're oftentimes lobed, or sometimes so deeply lobed that we call them dissected. We see that a lot in the family. So remember all these features as we go through your required genera one by one. The first required genus is Papaver. This is the genus of poppies. The common name for this is poppy. You could say common poppy or opium poppy is in this genus. Lots of very well-known members of this genus. So notice in this picture, they have 4 petals. That is typical. They're also going to have 2 sepals. This picture right here is a picture of the flower in bud. So what happens is the flower is nodding when it's in bud, and then as it opens, it becomes more upright. Something that we can glean from this picture is that they've got many stamens. Sorry, that red's kind of hard to read there. We have many of these things, many stamens. That looks like an 8, but it's supposed to be many. Stamens. We have multiple fused carpels. Usually in this genus, there's anywhere from 8 to 12 fused carpels. And what else can we glean from this picture? Let's move on. The next slide we have is a picture of their fruits. Their fruits look like this. So the gynoecium swells up. They lose all of their perianth parts and those stamens. And this picture on the right here is sort of right before it opens up. And this is a stage where they're filled with this really resinous substance. Now, this picture on the left here, now is a picture of the capsules once they've already opened. Notice right here, these tiny little openings that I'm kind of highlighting with this red, or no, this kind of purple over here on this one. Those openings, do they kind of remind you of the little pore openings of the anthers and Ericaceae? Well, they might, and this is why we call this type of capsule a capsule with porocidal dehiscence. The way they open, it's not on the valves, it's with those little tiny pores. And so the only way for seeds to escape from this capsule are kind of way up here. So this is approximately where this capsule will be opening, right here. And so maybe the wind would need to push those capsules over from side to side in order to get those seeds to be removed from the capsule. So this is again called porocidal capsule dehiscence, or a capsule with porocidal dehiscence. We see that in genus Papaver. Cool, moving on. Here's another look at those fruits before, during, and after maturation. This picture on the right is what some folks do to extract opioids from members of this genus. This is known as the opium poppy, and you can derive things like opium, and then all sorts of products that are derived from that, including some really ugly ones like heroin, and then some really important ones, things that are used for, for example, really important surgeries. Okay, your next required genus has a similar common name, but there's a very a large distinction. Eschscholzia is the name of this genus. The common name is the California poppy. And yes, it is California state the California state flower, California poppy. Maybe you've been lucky enough to see a massive mountainside or field like one in this picture. They are able to sort of take over a hillside like that. We can see in this picture that we do, again, have 4 petals, just like in genus Papaver. And we are not seeing any sepals. What this structure is right here is actually an expanded receptacle. People call that a receptacle skirt, but actually we have not accounted for the sepals yet. We've accounted for the 4 petals. Notice how this petal and this petal are sort of inside of this petal and this petal. We do have 4 total petals, but it's sort of in a 2 plus 2 fashion, if you will. There's 2 inside and 2 outside. All right, next slide. Here's a picture of them growing right out front of Science D. This is where we would be talking about them, of course, if we were all together. Miss you all, of course. We need to account for that calyx. Those sepals, we had not accounted for them yet. Well, they are so cool. These are some of the coolest sepals out there. What happens is the sepals protect the developing flower bud, and then they fall off like this. They end up looking like a wizard cap, like you can see in this picture right here. It's this triangular structure that's sort of wrinkly at the bottom that falls off and exposes those nicely developed petals. And this structure is derived from the fused sepals. There's 2 fused sepals. Technically, you can't really tell that it's 2, but it completely falls off. So the sepals and the petals really never meet each other in their full glory. And instead, you'll find these little fused calyx structures below the flowers. What these are called, what this structure right here is called, is a calyptra. Calyptra. It sort of means like a cap. And something that's short-lived, something that's going to fall off. Here's another picture of the cap here on the left. All right, that's the calyptra again, the fused sepals. On the right, this is a picture of their fruits, actually. So again, there's that receptacle skirt for reference, and their fruits are these elongate capsules, not with porocidal dehiscence, just sort of normal valvate dehiscence. And here's a close-up of those many stamens. Now, these structures right in the middle are actually the stigmas. So let's look at a closer picture of those now. In this next picture, we've removed the entire gynecium and sort of sliced it right here with a razor to show you the cross-section. Now, according to this cross-section, it looks like there's 2 carpels, right? Looks like there is sort of some seeds attached over here and some, well, ovules at this stage attached over there. And it's true, there's 2 fused carpels here. But over here, it appears that there are 4 styles and stigmas. Well, what's actually happening is that there are 2 styles and 2 stigmas. It's just that each one of these stigmas is very, very deeply lobed. So what I just drew would be approximately 1 stigma. And then over here is the other stigma. Crazy. It's just each stigma is deeply lobed, so it appears as though there's 4. Really, there's just 2. Okay, our last genus is shockingly different from those first 2. Our first 2 required genera in Papaveraceae had actinomorphy, right? This flower, Dicentra, known as bleeding hearts, is strongly, strongly zygomorphic. Bleeding hearts. Bilateral symmetry. There's a whole kind of part of this family that has strong bilateral symmetry. This is part of that group of the family. Here's a closer up picture showing those deeply dissected leaves. That's pretty common in the genus. We know that kind of from the family as well. And we've got to get a closer up look at those flowers. These are wild flowers. Very complicated, and we've got to talk about them. Right here is a sepal. It's kind of short-lived usually. We're just seeing the one because the other one is on the back side of this photo, sort of. There are 4 total petals. Just like we know for the family, if there are 2 sepals, there must be 4 petals. Well, the 4 petals come in kind of 2 different forms. The outer 2 petals are these ones. The outer 2 are these giant pouched petals that give the flower the overall heart shape. Okay. The inner 2 petals, we can only see sort of part of them, but they're right here. Right here is one of those inner petals. And then on the back side, there'd be another one. These inner petals are actually fused. What? And there's 2 of them. These outer ones, you might describe them as pouched, or sometimes you might even call them so deeply pouched as to be spurred. And again, there's 2 of them, so 4 total petals. Crazy. Now let's go, here's another species of a member of the genus Dicentra, just showing a different form. This crazy fancy ridge right here is part of those inner 2 petals, which are fused. They're fused sort of right here in this ridge, actually. And then this part is 1 petal, and this sort, or actually, I guess this whole part right here is 1 petal. And then, I got crazy. Let's just look at the next picture, which is a dissection of one of these. Someone has so nicely pulled apart each one of these layers. So here again is that outer pouched petal. There's 2 of them. Here is one of those inner fused petals. Again, it's just fused right here. This petal is normally fused right there at the tip, but this person has removed those fused petals from each other just for the dissections function. Wow, crazy. Those inner 2 petals sort of surround the andrecium. Now, this is a really wild andrecium. This is one side of it, and this is the other side of it. Also happens to be sort of heart-shaped. On this side of it, we have actually 3 fused stamens. What? And then on this side, we have the other 3 fused stamens. So a total of 6 stamens, but fused in 2 sets. This is very unique. This is something that you do not see in any other genus. This is very distinctive of the genus Dicentra. And when we have 2 sort of sets within the andrecium, like 2 sets of stamens, we have a very specific botanical term for that. It's called diadelphous. Let me write that down. Again, diadelphous, it really just means within your andrecium, your stamens are sort of fused into these 2 sets, or somehow split into 2 sets. And here's a closer up look at one of those capsules just busting out through the perianth, starting to develop with those seeds inside of it. And that's my last slide. See you next time.